Anna didn't know that the devastatingly handsome stranger sliding into the empty chair across from her was the most powerful man in the realm. She didn't know his wolf had recognized her scent the moment he stepped through the restaurant's gold-trimmed doors, and she certainly didn't know he'd been searching for his mate for over 2 centuries. All she knew was that Marcus had vanished 23 minutes ago. The upscale restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and the gentle clink of silverware against fine china. Anna's fingers twisted the cloth napkin in her lap, her cheeks burning as she caught another couple glancing her way with poorly concealed pity. The waiter had already approached twice, his polite smile growing more strained each time she insisted she was waiting for someone. She should leave. She knew she should leave. But something about walking out alone felt like admitting defeat, like proving her sister Claire right about everything she'd ever said. No man stays, Anna. You're too quiet, too bookish, too much work for too little reward. The chair scraped against marble as someone sat down across from her. Anna's breath caught. The man settling into Marcus's abandoned seat was nothing like her absent date. Where Marcus had been average height with nervous energy, this stranger commanded the space around him with effortless authority. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his black suit clearly custom-made, and his amber eyes held an intensity that made her pulse skip. "You deserve better," he said simply, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. Heat flooded Anna's cheeks. "I'm sorry. I think there's been a mistake. I'm waiting for someone." "No." His gaze never wavered from hers. "You were waiting for someone. He left through the kitchen entrance 11 minutes ago." The words hit like a physical blow. Anna's hands went cold. "He what?" The stranger's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The coward couldn't even face you to make his excuses. He told the host to inform you he had a family emergency." A pause. There was no emergency. There was another woman waiting in his car. Something crumbled inside Anna's chest. She'd known Marcus wasn't particularly interested during their brief phone conversations, but she'd hoped tonight might change that. Instead, he'd humiliated her more thoroughly than she'd thought possible. "I should go." She started to rise, her chair catching on the carpet. "Stay." The command was quiet but absolute. "You came here for dinner. You should have dinner." Anna sank back down, overwhelmed by the stranger's presence. "I don't even know who you are." "Kieran." He raised his hand, and somehow a waiter appeared instantly at their table. "We'll have the chef's tasting menu, and bring the lady something for her nerves, the 20-year port." "Sir, I really can't," Anna began. "You can." Kieran's attention focused on her entirely, as if she were the only person in the crowded restaurant. "Unless you have somewhere else to be." Anna thought of her empty apartment, her sister's predicted mockery when she heard about tonight's disaster, the romance novel waiting on her nightstand that would remind her of everything she didn't have. "No," she admitted quietly. "I don't." The waiter departed with swift efficiency. Kieran leaned back in his chair, studying her with those unsettling amber eyes. "Tell me about yourself, Anna." Her name on his lips sent warmth spiraling through her chest. "How do you know my name?" "Your reservation." A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Among other things." Something in his tone made her pulse quicken, but she couldn't identify why. "What other things?" Instead of answering, he asked, "What do you do?" "I work at Thornfield Rare Books." The admission felt small after his commanding presence, his expensive suit, the way staff seemed to materialize at his slightest gesture. "I catalogue first editions and help customers find obscure titles." Interest sparked in his eyes. "You work with old stories." "The oldest ones are the best ones." Anna found herself relaxing despite the surreal situation. Stories of redemption, of people finding where they belong, of love conquering impossible odds. "Do you believe that?" Kieran asked quietly. "That love conquers impossible odds?" The question carried weight she didn't understand. "I want to," she said honestly, "though my sister says I'm naive for believing in fairy tales." Kieran's expression hardened. "Your sister is wrong." The certainty in his voice made something flutter in Anna's chest. The waiter returned with wine and the first course, but Anna barely noticed the food. She was lost in Kieran's attention, in the way he listened to every word she said, as if it mattered, as if she mattered. "What about you?" she asked as they shared dessert. "What do you do?" "Family business," he said vaguely. "I travel frequently, handle negotiations." There was something he wasn't saying, but Anna didn't press. The evening felt too fragile, too perfect to risk breaking with difficult questions. When the last plate was cleared, Kieran stood and offered his hand. "May I walk you home?" Anna stared at his outstretched palm. Everything about this felt impossible. Men like him didn't rescue women like her. They didn't appear out of nowhere with perfect timing and devastating smiles. But his hand was warm and steady when she took it. The walk to her modest apartment building passed in comfortable conversation. Kieran asked about her favourite books, listened intently to her descriptions of rare manuscripts, made her laugh with dry observations about the city's architecture. By the time they reached her door, the humiliation of Marcus's abandonment felt like something that had happened to someone else. "Thank you," Anna said softly, reluctant to let the evening end. "For tonight, for making it bearable." Kieran stepped closer, and Anna caught his scent, something warm and woodsy that made her think of safety. "Have dinner with me tomorrow," he said. "A proper dinner." Anna's heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't understand why you'd want to." "Because," Kieran said, lifting his hand to brush a strand of hair from her face, "you deserve to be chosen first, not abandoned, not settled for, chosen." The words sent heat cascading through her entire body. "Yes," she whispered before she could think better of it. Kieran's smile was devastating. "I'll pick you up at 7. He turned and walked into the night, leaving Anna standing in her doorway with her pulse racing and something golden and warm spreading through her chest. She pressed her palm to her sternum, wondering why it felt like an invisible thread was pulling tight between them, even as he disappeared around the corner. She had no idea that what she felt was the first stirring of a bond that would change everything. The next evening arrived faster than Anna had expected, bringing with it a nervous energy that made her change clothes 3 times before settling on a simple navy dress that brought out her eyes. She'd spent the day replaying every moment of the night before, half convinced she'd imagined the entire encounter with Kieran. But at 7 o'clock sharp, a knock echoed through her apartment. Anna opened the door to find Kieran looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit, holding a single white rose. The sight of him made her pulse skip, confirming that her memory hadn't exaggerated his impact. "For you," he said, offering the flower with a slight smile that made warmth pool in her stomach. "It's beautiful." Anna breathed in the rose's delicate fragrance, acutely aware of Kieran's amber eyes watching her every movement. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." His voice carried that same quiet authority from the night before. "Are you ready?" The restaurant Kieran chose was even more exclusive than the previous night's venue. Anna felt underdressed the moment they stepped inside, but Kieran's hand at the small of her back steadied her nerves. The maitre d' greeted him by name and led them to a private corner table overlooking the city lights. "This is too much," Anna said, as Kieran held out her chair. "I mean, it's beautiful, but you don't have to try so hard to impress me." Kieran settled across from her, his intense gaze never wavering. "I'm not trying to impress you, Anna. I'm trying to show you how you should be treated." The words sent heat cascading through her chest. "And how is that?" "Like you matter, like your presence is a gift." He leaned forward slightly, and Anna caught that woodsy scent that had haunted her dreams. "Tell me about the books you work with. What draws you to the old stories?" Anna found herself relaxing as she described her work, the way Kieran listened making her forget her nervousness. There's something magical about stories that have survived centuries, she said, gesturing with her wineglass. These tales of love conquering impossible circumstances, of ordinary people discovering they're meant for extraordinary things. I catalogue them, but sometimes I think they're cataloguing something in me too. What do you mean? Kieran's attention was absolute, as if her words were the most important thing he'd ever heard. My favourite collection is fairy tales that were considered lost. Stories where the girl who was overlooked, dismissed, abandoned by everyone who should have protected her, she finds someone who sees her worth, someone who chooses her above all others. Anna felt heat rise in her cheeks. Claire says I read too many fantasies, that I should focus on reality instead of impossible dreams. Kieran's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Your sister again. She's not wrong, though. Anna's voice grew quieter. I mean, look at last night. Marcus took one look at me and decided I wasn't worth dessert. Claire always said no man would stay once he really got to know me, that I'm too quiet, too bookish, that I expect too much. Your sister, Kieran said with deadly calm, is wrong about everything. The certainty in his voice made Anna's breath catch. You don't know me well enough to say that. Don't I? Kieran reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. I know you believe in love that transforms people. I know you see beauty in forgotten things, find value in what others overlook. I know you have a strength that lets you sit alone in a restaurant for 20 minutes rather than run, and a grace that made you forgive a stranger for intruding on your evening. Anna stared at their joined hands, overwhelmed by the intensity of his attention. How can you see all that from one dinner? Because I'm looking. Kieran's thumb traced across her knuckles, sending shivers through her entire body. Really looking, not through you, not around you, not at what you might become, at who you are right now. Something cracked open in Anna's chest, a longing so fierce it made her dizzy. I don't understand why you're interested in me. Because you're extraordinary. Kieran's voice dropped to a whisper that seemed to resonate in her bones. Because when I look at you, I see home. Anna's breath stuttered. Kieran. Tell me about your family, he said, changing the subject with gentle skill. Besides your sister. Anna found herself sharing more than she'd intended, about parents who died when she was 15, leaving her to Claire's reluctant care. About feeling like a burden, an obligation rather than a loved sister. About the loneliness that had shaped her love for stories where abandoned girls found their place in the world. You weren't a burden, Kieran said, fiercely when she finished. You were a child who deserved protection and love. Your sister failed you. She did her best. No. Kieran's eyes blazed with an intensity that made Anna's pulse race. Her best would have been making you feel wanted, cherished. Instead, she convinced you that you were too much trouble for anyone to love. That's not protection, Anna. That's cruelty. Tears pricked at Anna's eyes. No one had ever validated her feelings about Claire's coldness, the constant criticism disguised as concern. I never thought of it that way. Because you have a generous heart that makes excuses for people who don't deserve them. Kieran squeezed her hand gently. But generosity should be met with gratitude, not exploitation. The evening flowed around them like a dream. Kieran shared carefully chosen details about his travels, his love of literature, the weight of family expectations that resonated with her own experiences of never feeling quite good enough. But where her stories were tinged with resignation, his carried an underlying strength that made her wonder what kind of family business required such confidence. What exactly do you do? She asked as they shared chocolate tart. You mentioned negotiations, but you seem so, I don't know, powerful, like you're used to getting your way. Something flickered across Kieran's features. I handle disputes, family obligations that require delicate management. It's not particularly interesting. Anna sensed there was more to the story, but the way he deflected felt protective rather than secretive, as if he were shielding her from something rather than hiding it. When the meal ended, Kieran walked her home again, their conversation flowing easily in the warm evening air. At her door, he turned to face her, and the intensity in his amber eyes made her pulse skip. "I want to see you again," he said simply. Anna's heart hammered against her ribs. "Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day you'll let me." Kieran stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I know this is fast, Anna. I know it doesn't make sense, but I can't seem to stay away from you." "I don't want you to stay away," she whispered, the admission escaping before she could stop it. Kieran's smile was devastating. "Good, because I have no intention of going anywhere." He leaned down, and for a breathless moment Anna thought he might kiss her. Instead, he pressed his lips to her forehead, the gentle contact sending warmth spiralling through her entire body. "Sleep well," he murmured against her skin. "Dream of me." Anna watched him disappear into the night, her fingers pressed to her forehead where she could still feel the phantom pressure of his lips. The golden warmth in her chest had grown stronger, spreading through her veins like honey, and she had the strangest sensation that something fundamental had shifted in the universe. She fell asleep thinking about amber eyes and impossible fairy tales, unaware that the man who'd just left her was living proof that some impossible things were simply waiting for the right moment to become real. Anna spent an hour choosing what to wear for their third date, finally settling on her one good dress, a deep emerald green that brought out her eyes. She'd never owned anything truly elegant, but something about Kieran made her want to try. When she caught her reflection in the mirror, she barely recognised the glowing woman looking back at her. The knock came precisely at 7, and Anna's pulse quickened as she opened the door. Kieran looked devastating in a midnight blue suit that emphasised his broad shoulders, but it was the way his amber eyes lit up when he saw her that made her knees weak. "Beautiful," he murmured, offering his arm. "Absolutely beautiful." Anna felt heat rise in her cheeks as they walked to the street, but her steps faltered when she saw what waited for them. A sleek black car with tinted windows sat at the curb, and 2 men in dark suits stood at attention beside it. "Kieran," she said uncertainly. "It's nothing to worry about," he said gently, but something in his voice had changed, become more formal. "Just precautions." One of the men opened the rear door with a bow that seemed far too respectful for a simple dinner date. Anna slid into leather seats more luxurious than anything she'd ever experienced, her mind racing as Kieran settled beside her. "Precautions for what?" she asked as the car pulled away from the curb with smooth precision. "My work requires certain security measures." Kieran's hand found hers, his thumb tracing soothing circles across her knuckles. "I should have mentioned it earlier." Anna stared out the window as they drove through parts of the city she'd never seen, past gates and gardens that spoke of wealth beyond her imagination. "What kind of negotiations require bodyguards?" "The complicated kind." Kieran's voice was careful, measured. "Anna, there are things about my life that might seem overwhelming at first, but I need you to know that nothing changes how I feel about you." Ice formed in Anna's stomach. "What kind of things?" The car turned through ornate iron gates topped with golden wolves, and Anna's breath caught as a palatial building came into view. Marble columns soared toward the sky, and uniformed guards stood at attention along the circular drive. "Kieran," she whispered, "where are we?" "Home," he said quietly. The car stopped, and immediately staff appeared to open doors. Anna stepped out on trembling legs, overwhelmed by the grandeur surrounding her. Every person they passed bowed deeply, not the casual nods she'd seen at restaurants, but formal genuflections that spoke of deep respect or fear. "Your Majesty," a distinguished man in formal livery said as they approached the entrance, "your private dining room is prepared as requested." Anna's blood went cold. "Your Majesty?" Kieran's hand tightened on hers as he led her through marble halls lined with portraits of stern-faced men and women wearing crowns. "Anna, you're the king." The words escaped as barely a whisper. "You're the Alpha King." They reached a private dining room where crystal chandelier cast rainbow patterns across walls hung with tapestries worth more than Anna would earn in a lifetime. Kieran turned to face her, his amber eyes reflecting the candlelight. "Yes," he said simply. Anna stared at him, her mind reeling. The most powerful man in the realm, the ruler of the Shifter Kingdom, whose very name inspired either reverence or terror. And he'd been sitting across from her, listening to her talk about cataloguing books and reading fairy tales. "You could have anyone," she said, her voice breaking. "Anyone. Queens, princesses, women who know how to navigate this world. Why would you want some nobody who works in a bookshop?" Kieran stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "Because you're not nobody, Anna. You're everything." "I don't know how to be a queen. I don't know how to curtsy properly or speak to nobles or—" Anna's breathing became shallow, panic clawing at her chest. "I'm just Anna. I read too much and talked too little, and my sister's right. I'm nothing special." "Stop." The command in Kieran's voice made her freeze. "Your sister is wrong. She's been wrong about everything since the day she convinced you that you weren't worthy of love." Anna shook her head, backing toward the door. "This is insane. You're the Alpha King. I work in a bookshop. I live in a studio apartment and eat cereal for dinner and you have a soul that calls to mine." Kieran's voice dropped to a whisper that seemed to resonate in her bones. "Anna, for 2 centuries I've been searching for someone who could see me as more than a crown, someone whose heart could match mine. Do you think it's a coincidence that you appeared in my life the moment I was ready to give up hope?" "Coincidence, yes." Anna's hand found the door handle. "That's exactly what I think this is." "Then why does your chest feel like there's golden thread pulling tight when you look at me?" Kieran asked quietly. "Why does every instinct you have scream that you belong here, even though your mind says it's impossible?" Anna's breath caught. He was right. The warmth in her chest had been growing stronger every moment she spent with him, and now it felt like a living thing connecting them across the space between their bodies. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't be what you need." "You already are." Kieran made no move to stop her as she gripped the door handle. "But I won't force this, Anna. I won't trap you or manipulate you into staying. If you want to leave, leave. But know this, you're not running from me. You're running from yourself, from the truth that you feel it too." Anna's hand trembled on the handle. "Feel what?" "The bond." Kieran's amber eyes blazed with intensity. "The reason fairy tales exist in the first place. The reason people tell stories about ordinary women becoming queens. Because it's not a fairy tale, Anna. It's destiny." Tears spilled down Anna's cheeks. "I'm scared." "I know." Kieran's voice gentled, becoming the man she'd fallen for over candlelit dinners. "I know it's terrifying, but I need you to know that I'll wait. However long you need to accept this, to accept us, I'll wait. Because you're worth waiting for. You always have been." Anna opened the door, her heart breaking with every step she took away from him. "I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't." She ran through marble halls past bowing servants, her heels echoing against floors that had been walked by kings for generations. In the car they summoned for her. She pressed her hand to her chest, where the golden warmth pulsed like a second heartbeat, growing more painful with every mile that separated her from Kieran. Back in her tiny apartment, Anna sank onto her bed and sobbed, not for the luxury she was walking away from, but for the look in Kieran's eyes when she'd left. The patient understanding that somehow made her leaving hurt even more. 3 days passed in a haze of misery. Kieran called, but Anna couldn't bring herself to answer. He sent flowers with notes that made her cry, simple messages telling her he was thinking of her, that he was waiting, that nothing had changed. The golden thread in her chest pulled tighter with each day, until she could barely breathe from the ache of it. On the fourth day, Anna stood in her bookshop, surrounded by fairy tales, and wondered if she was the biggest fool in the history of the world. Because every story on these shelves told her the same thing. Sometimes the impossible was just another word for destiny, waiting for someone brave enough to believe. 3 days stretched into an eternity of golden thread, pulling tight in Anna's chest, making it hard to breathe, harder to think of anything but amber eyes and the patient way Kieran had let her walk away. She stopped answering his calls after the first day, but the flowers kept coming. White roses with simple notes that broke her heart a little more each time. Thinking of you. Kay. You're worth waiting for. Kay. When you're ready, I'm here. Kay. Anna was arranging the latest bouquet in her tiny kitchen when someone pounded on her door with enough force to rattle the frame. She opened it to find her sister Claire standing in the hallway, her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer clothes making Anna's simple jeans and sweater feel shabby by comparison. "Well, well," Claire said, pushing past Anna into the apartment without invitation. "I heard the most interesting story from Marcus yesterday." Ice formed in Anna's stomach. "Claire, I don't want to talk about how you've been telling people you're dating the Alpha King." Claire's laugh was sharp, cruel. "Really, Anna, that's what you've resorted to? Delusional fantasies?" "It's not a fantasy." The words escaped before Anna could stop them. Claire's eyes glittered with malicious delight. "Oh, this is even better than I thought. You actually believe it, don't you? You actually think the most powerful man in the realm would be interested in someone like you?" Anna's hands clenched into fists. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know you're a lonely little bookworm who reads too many fairy tales and thinks some rich man is going to sweep her off her feet." Claire moved closer, her voice dropping to the cutting whisper she'd perfected during their childhood. "But this is real life, Anna, and in real life men like that don't choose women like you, they choose women like me." The golden thread in Anna's chest pulsed with sudden heat, as if responding to her rising anger. "Get out!" "I told Marcus about your little delusion," Claire continued, circling Anna like a predator. "He thought it was hilarious, said he dodged a bullet dating someone so desperate and pathetic. We had quite a laugh about it." I said, "Get out." Anna's voice shook with fury she'd never allowed herself to feel. "Oh, Anna," Claire's smile was poisonous. "You can't even stand up for yourself properly. What makes you think a king would want someone so weak?" The knock on the door made both women freeze. Anna's heart stopped as a familiar voice called through the wood. "Marcus, I know you're in there. We need to talk." Anna's blood went cold as she opened the door to find Marcus standing in the hallway with 2 of his friends, all of them wearing the kind of cruel smiles that had haunted her high school nightmares. "Anna," Marcus said with false cheer, "I hear you've been spreading some interesting stories about our date." "I haven't said anything to anyone," Anna said, trying to close the door. Marcus's foot shot out, blocking it. "Come on, don't be shy. Claire told us all about your fantasy boyfriend, the Alpha King, right? That's quite an imagination you have there." His friends laughed, and Anna felt heat flood her cheeks. "Please just leave." "Leave? But we came all this way to meet royalty." Marcus pushed the door open wider, forcing Anna to step back. "Where is he, Anna? Where's your king?" "This is harassment," Anna said, her voice barely steady. "You need to leave right now." "Or what?" Marcus stepped closer, and Anna caught the scent of alcohol on his breath. "You'll call your imaginary boyfriend, tell him we're being mean to you?" Claire laughed from behind Anna. "She actually believes it, Marcus. She actually thinks she's dating the Alpha King." Poor little Anna. Marcus reached out and grabbed her wrist, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Living in a fantasy world because no real man would ever want damaged goods like you." The golden thread in Anna's chest suddenly blazed with heat, and every instinct she had screamed that help was coming. She tried to pull away from Marcus, but his grip tightened. "Let me go," she said, fighting panic as his friends crowded closer. "Let me guess," Marcus said, his voice growing uglier. "He's rich and powerful, and he swept you off your feet after I left you sitting alone like the pathetic—" "Remove your hand, now." The voice cut through the room like a blade, carrying such absolute authority that Marcus's grip loosened instinctively. Anna spun toward the doorway and felt her heart stop. Kieran stood framed in the entrance, and he was nothing like the gentle man who'd walked her home after dinner. Power radiated from him in waves, his amber eyes blazing with a fury that made the air itself seem to vibrate. He wore a black suit that somehow looked like armour, and every inch of him screamed predator barely held in check. Marcus dropped Anna's wrist as if it had burned him. "Who the hell are you?" Kieran's gaze flicked to Anna's wrist, where red marks were already forming, and something dangerous shifted in his expression. "I'm the man who's going to make you regret putting your hands on her." "Look, buddy," Marcus said, trying to recover his swagger. "This is between me and my crazy ex-date here. She's been telling people she's dating the Alpha King. Can you believe that? Delusional, right?" Kieran stepped into the room, and somehow it felt like the space rearranged itself around his presence. "Delusional? I mean, look at her." Marcus gestured at Anna. "And look at him. The Alpha King, like he'd ever lower himself to someone so ordinary." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kieran moved with fluid grace until he was standing directly in front of Anna, his body a wall of protection between her and Marcus. "You're right about one thing," Kieran said, his voice deadly quiet. "I am the Alpha King." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's face went white, his friends backing toward the wall as if trying to disappear. Even Claire had gone statue still, her cruel confidence evaporating. "And she," Kieran continued, turning slightly so his hand could brush Anna's cheek, "is under my protection. She is precious to me beyond measure, and seeing marks on her skin from your hands makes me want to demonstrate exactly why kings have executioners." Anna felt tears prick her eyes at the fierce tenderness in his voice, the way he spoke about her like she was something rare and treasured. "Your Majesty," Marcus stammered, dropping to his knees so fast he nearly fell over. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "You didn't know she mattered." Kieran's voice could have cut glass. "You didn't know she deserved respect. You didn't know that putting your hands on any woman without permission makes you less than worthless. Those are the things you should have known without me telling you." Marcus was shaking now, his friends having fled entirely. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I'm so sorry." "You're not apologising to me." Kieran stepped aside, leaving Marcus kneeling before Anna. "You're apologising to her, the woman whose wrist you marked, the woman you called damaged goods, the woman who is worth 1,000 of you." Anna stared down at Marcus, trembling with adrenaline and something that felt like power. "I don't accept your apology," she said clearly, "and I want you to leave, now." Marcus scrambled to his feet and ran, leaving only Claire standing frozen against the far wall. "And you," Kieran said, turning those blazing amber eyes on Anna's sister, "you told him where to find her." Claire opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "You filled her head with poison about not being worthy of love," Kieran continued. "You convinced her she was a burden instead of a gift. You failed her when she needed protection, and you failed her again today." Claire whispered. "Get out," Anna said, finding her voice. "Get out and don't come back." Claire fled without another word, leaving Anna and Kieran alone in the sudden silence. "Are you hurt?" Kieran asked immediately, his voice gentle again as he reached for her wrist. Anna let him examine the red marks, her pulse racing from his nearness. "How did you know to come?" "I felt it," he said simply, his thumb tracing carefully around the bruises. "Through the bond, your fear, your anger, it called to me." Anna stared up at him, overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. "You came for me." "I'll always come for you." Kieran's free hand cupped her face, his amber eyes soft with tenderness. "Anna, I can't force you to accept what we have, but I can promise you this. You will never face anything alone again if you don't want to. You will never be unprotected, undefended, uncherished, not while I breathe. The golden thread in Anna's chest blazed with warmth, and suddenly she understood what it was. Not just attraction or connection, but recognition, soul calling to soul across centuries of waiting. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know." Kieran's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "I know it's terrifying to trust something this big, this impossible. But Anna, love, you don't have to be ready for everything at once. You just have to be ready for right now, for this moment, for me." Anna looked up into amber eyes that held infinite patience, infinite devotion, and felt something settle into place in her chest. "I don't want to run any more." Kieran's smile was devastating. "Then don't." Anna rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring all her terror and hope and desperate love into the contact. Kieran's arms came around her immediately, holding her like she was precious, like she was everything, like she was finally home. When they broke apart, Anna kept her forehead pressed against his. "I choose you," she whispered. "I choose this. I choose us." "Thank God," Kieran breathed against her lips. "Because I've been yours since the moment I saw you sitting alone in that restaurant, and I was starting to think I'd have to wait another century to hear you say it." Anna laughed through her tears, and for the first time in her life she felt like the heroine of her own fairy tale. The days that followed were a whirlwind of discovery and careful courtship. Kieran kept his promise to go slowly, taking Anna to quiet dinners at the palace where she could grow accustomed to the luxury without the pressure of public appearances. He showed her his private library, a room filled with first editions that made her heart sing, and walked with her through gardens where centuries of kings had found peace. "I've been searching for you for 200 years, Kieran told her one evening as they sat by the fireplace in his study. Anna curled against his side with a book in her lap. Every decade that passed, I wondered if I'd imagined the stories about fated mates, if the bond was just a fairy tale kings told themselves to feel less alone. Anna looked up at him, studying the strong line of his jaw in the firelight. "What made you keep believing?" "Hope, I suppose. Stubborn hope that somewhere out there was someone who would see past the crown to the man underneath." Kieran's fingers traced through her hair, the gentle touch sending warmth spiralling through her chest. "Someone who would love me for who I am, not what I can give them." "And what if she had never come?" Anna asked softly. Kieran was quiet for a long moment. "Then I would have died alone, knowing I'd at least waited for something real, instead of settling for something convenient." His amber eyes met hers. "But you did come? You walked into that restaurant looking like my every prayer answered, and I knew—" Anna's breath caught. Knew what? That the wait was over, that my heart had finally found its home. Kieran leaned down to press a gentle kiss to her temple. "I knew I'd love you for the rest of my very long life." The words sent heat cascading through Anna's entire body. She set aside her book and turned to face him fully. "Kieran, too much?" His voice was carefully neutral, but she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "No." Anna cupped his face in her hands, marvelling at how this powerful man could look uncertain about her feelings. Not too much, never too much. She kissed him then, pouring all her growing love into the contact. Kieran responded immediately, his arms tightening around her as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, Anna felt dizzy from the golden warmth flooding her veins. "Stay tonight," Kieran whispered against her lips. Anna's pulse raced. "Kieran, just stay. Sleep beside me. I want to wake up knowing you're safe." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "I've spent 2 centuries sleeping alone. I don't want to waste another night." Anna nodded, overwhelmed by the tender need in his voice. That night she fell asleep wrapped in Kieran's arms, feeling safer than she ever had in her life. When she woke to find him watching her with soft amber eyes, She knew she never wanted to wake up anywhere else. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured, brushing a kiss across her forehead. "Good morning." Anna stretched against his warmth, marvelling at how natural this felt. "Did you sleep?" "Better than I have in decades." Kieran's smile was devastating. "Having my mate in my arms changes everything." The word mate sent shivers through Anna's body. She was beginning to understand what it meant. Not just love, but recognition. Two souls that had been created to find each other across time and space. Over the following days, Kieran shared more of himself with her. He told her about losing his parents when he was barely old enough to rule, about the loneliness of making decisions that affected thousands of lives, about the weight of a crown that had been passed down through his family for generations. "I used to think the throne was a burden," he said one afternoon, as they walked through the palace gardens. "Something I endured because duty demanded it. But now I realize it was preparation. Every difficult decision, every moment of isolation was teaching me to value what really matters." "And what's that?" Anna asked, her hand warm in his. "Love, family, the person who makes everything else worthwhile." Kieran stopped walking and turned to face her. "You, Anna, you make everything else worthwhile." Anna felt tears prick her eyes. "I still can't believe this is real sometimes, that someone like you could want someone like me." "Someone like me?" Kieran's voice was incredulous. "Anna, I'm a man who spent 2 centuries alone, who had almost given up on finding happiness. You're a woman who believes in fairy tales, who sees magic in old stories, who has a heart generous enough to forgive a stranger for intruding on her worst night. If anyone is too good for this relationship, it's you." "You really believe that?" Anna said wonderingly. "I know it." Kieran pulled her closer, his eyes blazing with conviction. "You saved me, Anna. Before you, I was going through the motions of living. Now, I'm actually alive." That evening, as they shared a quiet dinner in Kieran's private rooms, Anna found herself studying the palace staff who served them. Every person treated her with genuine respect, not the forced politeness she'd expected. "They like me," she said with surprise, as a maid smiled warmly while clearing their plates. "They love you," Kieran corrected. "You treat them like people, not servants. You remember their names, ask about their families. They've been waiting decades for a queen who would see them as individuals." "Queen?" Anna's heart skipped. "Kieran, we haven't talked about—" "Haven't we?" Kieran reached across the table to take her hand. "Anna, what did you think this was leading to? What did you think happens when the Alpha King finds his mate?" Anna stared at their joined hands, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he was suggesting. "I don't know how to be a queen." "You don't know how to be my queen yet," Kieran said gently. "But you already know how to be the woman I love. The rest we can learn together." "What if I'm terrible at it? What if the kingdom doesn't accept me?" Kieran's grip tightened on her hand. "Then they'll learn to accept you, or they'll find themselves with a very unhappy king." His voice softened. "Anna, love, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you, the woman who's already stolen every heart in this palace, including mine." Anna looked up into amber eyes full of patience and devotion, and felt something settle into place in her chest. "Ask me," she whispered. Kieran's breath caught. "Anna?" "Ask me properly, the way a king should ask." Kieran stood slowly, his eyes never leaving hers, and then dropped to one knee beside her chair. From his pocket he produced a ring that took Anna's breath away, an ancient band set with stones that seemed to hold captured starlight. "Ah, Anna," Kieran said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are my heart, my soul, my everything. You are the answer to prayers I didn't know I was praying, the end of a search that defined my entire existence. Will you marry me? Will you be my queen, my mate, my forever?" Anna felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she looked down at the man who had rescued her from humiliation and shown her what it meant to be truly cherished. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." Kieran slipped the ring onto her finger, and Anna gasped as warmth shot up her arm and settled around her heart like a golden embrace. The bond between them flared to life, stronger than ever, and she could actually feel Kieran's joy mixing with her own. "Mine," Kieran breathed against her lips as he kissed her. "Yours," Anna agreed, finally understanding that some fairy tales were just destiny, waiting for someone brave enough to believe. That night, as Anna fell asleep wearing a ring that had been worn by queens for centuries, she pressed her hand to her chest where the golden thread had become a living flame of connection. She was no longer the abandoned girl sitting alone in a restaurant. She was Anna, beloved of the Alpha King, and she had finally found where she belonged. 6 months later, Anna stood before an ornate mirror in the royal dressing chamber, hardly recognizing the radiant woman looking back at her. The golden gown she wore had been crafted by the kingdom's finest seamstresses, its intricate embroidery catching the light like captured sunshine. Today was her official presentation to the kingdom as Kieran's queen, and she felt every inch the fairy tale princess she'd once only read about. "You look magnificent," said Elena, the head lady's maid who had become Anna's closest confidant. "The kingdom will fall in love with you the moment they see you." Anna touched the ancient crown that rested on her dark hair, still amazed that she was worthy to wear it. "I hope so. I still can't quite believe this is real." "Believe it," Elena said firmly. "You've brought light back to our king. The whole palace has changed since you arrived. There's laughter in these halls again." A soft knock interrupted them, and Anna's pulse quickened as Kieran entered the chamber. He looked magnificent in his formal royal attire, the crown of the Alpha King making him appear even more devastatingly handsome than usual. "Leave us," he said gently to the attendants, his amber eyes never leaving Anna's face. When they were alone, Kieran crossed the room slowly, his gaze reverent as it took in every detail of her appearance. "You are absolutely breathtaking," he murmured, taking her hands in his. "The most beautiful queen this kingdom has ever seen." "I'm nervous," Anna admitted, her fingers tightening on his. "The kingdom will adore you just as I do," Kieran assured her, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "You've already won the hearts of everyone in the palace. Today is just making it official." They made their way to the great balcony where thousands of citizens had gathered in the courtyard below. Anna's breath caught as she saw the sea of faces looking up at them with curiosity and hope. At Kieran's side, she felt strong enough to face anything. "My people!" Kieran's voice carried across the crowd with natural authority. "Today I present to you my queen, my mate, the woman who has brought joy back into my life and light back into this kingdom." The roar of approval from the crowd was deafening. Anna stepped forward, her hand steady in Kieran's as she smiled at the people who were now hers to serve and protect. After the ceremony, they retreated to Kieran's private study for a moment of quiet. Anna sank into her favourite chair by the fireplace, the one where she'd spent so many evenings reading while Kieran worked at his desk. "There's someone here to see you," Kieran said quietly. Anna looked up to see Claire standing in the doorway, looking smaller and more uncertain than Anna had ever seen her. Her sister's designer clothes seemed out of place in the elegant palace setting, and her usual cruel confidence was nowhere to be found. "Anna," Claire said hesitantly, "Your Majesty, I wanted to congratulate you and to apologise." Anna studied her sister's face, seeing something there she'd never noticed before, regret mixed with desperate hope. "For what, specifically?" "For everything. For telling you that you weren't worthy of love. For undermining your confidence every chance I got. For bringing Marcus to your apartment." Claire's voice broke slightly. "For being jealous of you instead of protecting you the way a sister should." "Jealous?" Anna couldn't hide her surprise. "Jealous of what?" "Of your heart," Claire said simply. "Of your ability to believe in good things, to see magic in the world. I lost that somewhere along the way, and instead of trying to find it again, I tried to destroy it in you. I'm sorry, Anna. I'm so very sorry." Anna looked at her sister. really looked at her and saw not the cruel woman who had tormented her, but a broken person who had been fighting her own battles. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "But Claire, things can't go back to the way they were. Too much has changed." "I know," Claire said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I just wanted you to know that you were never the problem. You were always everything you needed to be. I was just too damaged to see it." After Claire left, Anna curled up against Kieran's side on the sofa, processing the unexpected encounter. She seemed different. "Losing the chance to hurt someone can be transformative," Kieran said thoughtfully. "Now that you're beyond her reach, protected and cherished, she has to face what she really lost when she chose cruelty over love. Do you think people can really change?" "I think love changes everything," Kieran said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Look what it did for us." A year later, Anna stood in the same palace library where Kieran had first shown her his collection of rare books. Now it was their library, filled with stories they'd collected together, and Anna had never been happier. She was cataloguing a new acquisition when familiar arms wrapped around her from behind. "Hard at work, my love," Kieran murmured against her ear. Anna leaned back against his warmth, her hand instinctively moving to rest on the slight curve of her stomach. "Someone has to keep our library organised, especially now that we'll have little hands getting into everything soon." Kieran's hands covered hers, and Anna felt his joy through their bond like golden sunshine. "Have I told you today that I love you beyond measure?" "Only 3 times," Anna said with a laugh, "but I don't mind hearing it again." "I love you beyond measure," Kieran whispered, turning her in his arms. "My queen, my mate, my everything." Anna looked up into amber eyes full of infinite devotion and marvelled at the journey that had brought her here. From the abandoned woman sitting alone in a restaurant to the cherished queen carrying the future heir of the kingdom, it was better than any fairy tale she'd ever read. "You saved me," Anna said softly, echoing words from months before. "No, beloved," Kieran replied, just as he had then. "We saved each other." As Kieran kissed her in their library, filled with stories of love conquering all, Anna finally understood that she hadn't just found her happy ending. She'd found her forever beginning. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts on these stories of love conquering all. If you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free and helps more people discover that sometimes the most impossible love stories are simply destiny, waiting for someone brave enough to believe.